In North America, the Americas and Europe is also very troubling. And of course, the threat of the Iranian revolutionary regime, the Muslim Brotherhood, and other extremists are very serious. And yet, this bright spot of cooperation and respect is really an incredible and much needed phenomenon. And I hope it will continue to gain strength, and that maybe this will be the region that will bring light not only to the region, but hopefully to the world. So we have an amazing group of people. You've heard from them earlier today as well. I'd like to acknowledge we have Miriam Wagner here, who's the head of the director of the Wolf Institute in Cambridge, where we just had our conference last week. And we found a home for our postdoctoral program there, which is amazing. So we are indebted to Miriam, and it's amazing to have her as a colleague. So thank you for coming here this evening.
Thank you for the invitation.
Pleasure. So without further ado, I'm going to invite our first speaker, Dr. Elie from the New Trends Institute, which ISGAP signed a memorandum of understanding with recently, and Haris Rafiq is outside for a minute, and I visited the offices about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and it's amazing that they participated in the conference at Cambridge, and Dr. Elie came all the way back to be with us this evening from his home in the United Arab Emirates, so it's great that he's here. And I'm going to play his speech, and then you can take some questions. I know Dr. Elie has to return back to the airport, so he'll be the first speaker. So I'm going to start your speech, which has been recorded.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الجميع على دراية تامة عن أهمية مراكز الأبحاث والاتفاقيات الإبراهيمية، حيث تسهم مراكز الفكر والدراسات في خلق بيئة داعمة من خلال التعريف بأهمية هذه الاتفاقيات وبأهدافها التي تصب في النهاية لصالح شعوب المنطقة التي عانت كثيرا من جراء حالة عدم الاستقرار التي عاشتها على مدار عقود طويلة. ويمثل مركز ترندز للبحوث والاستشارات أحد أهم المراكز التي أخذت على عاتقها القيام بهذا الدور البناء انطلاقا من اهتمامه بأهمية نشر القيم التي تركز على السلام والاستقرار والتسامح، وأيضا التعايش بين المجتمعات، حيث بادر المركز فتح مجالات التعاون العلمي والبحثي مع مراكز البحوث في الدول الموقعة على هذه الاتفاقيات، وكان له السبق في أن يكون أول مركز بحثي يقع مقره في الدول العربية ينظم ندوة داخل إسرائيل بالتعاون مع مركز موشي ديان التابع لجامعة تل أبيب بمشاركة واسعة من المفكرين في دول الاتفاقيات الإبراهيمية. كما سعى المركز إلى التعريف بهذه الاتفاقيات وبأهميتها من خلال مجموعة من الآليات العلمية والعملية، ومن بينها أولا نشر الأوراق البحثية التي تتناول بالنقاش والتحليل كافة أوجه هذه الاتفاقيات وأهميتها وكيفية تفعيلها. ثانياً تنظيم العديد من الفعاليات التي شارك فيها خبراء وباحثون وأكاديميون ومفكرون ناقشوا تلك الاتفاقيات وسلطوا الضوء عليها من مختلف جوانبها. ثالثاً توقيع الشراكات البحثية مع المراكز الفكرية في دول الاتفاقيات وخاصة في إسرائيل، حيث تم توقيع اتفاقيات شراكة بحثية مع العديد من المؤسسات البحثية الإسرائيلية، من بينها معهد القدس للدراسات الاستراتيجية ومركز موشي ديان ومتبيت وغيرها. ومن المبادرات المستقبلية سيقوم المركز بتنظيم ندوة مهمة في شهر سبتمبر المقبل بالتعاون مع معهد جيجو للسلام بمشاركة نخبة من صناع القرار في هذه الدول، وكذلك الحدث الأهم في سبتمبر بتاريخ 27 و28 وللمرة الثانية على التوالي سيقوم المركز بتنظيم مؤتمره السنوي الثاني تحت عنوان الأمن المستدام في الشرق الأوسط، تحديات وفرص التغيير المناخي، بالتعاون مع أتلانتيك كونسل بواشنطن. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
So, thank you very much for an important speech again. Thank you. And if it's okay, would you like to say something to the audience with the interpreter, or would you take some questions?
Yeah, I need leave him.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so
So,
much.
no, shukran.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you so much. Yes, okay. Then there were three. Come here. Last night because
So thank you. So the next speaker with us, and some of you have heard him from the Cambridge conference, and thank you very much for returning, Dr. Elie out of Nuaimi. Thank you for being with us. I know it's a bit late where you are. So thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours, and we look forward to your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everyone. It's an honor for me to speak again to you today. Actually, I'm going to talk about the Abraham Accord. I believe it's very important before I proceed with explaining what the impact of the Abraham Accord and the great value that it added to not only to the UAE and Israel as two governments, but also to people, and also to create a new platform that will engage people to people in making a decision related, what kind of future they want for themselves and for their kids. But before that, it's very important, before people start looking at what's the Abraham Accord, what's the added value of it, it's very important to look into the region before the agreement of the Abraham Accord, before the announcement of the Abraham Accord. What kind of option the government has in the region, what kind of option the people also have in the region. You have to understand that our region has suffered for decades. Suffered of wars, of terrorism, of extremism, of hate, of a narrative that divided us. And we were almost, reaching a dead end, whereas especially the people, especially the youth in the region, they saw there is no hope, and we in the region, especially my generation, where their mind and heart were hijacked by those radicals, by those extremists who wanted to divide us, who created a narrative to destroy their own region and implement a certain agenda that they believe in. So, what the Abraham Accord actually did, bring a new hope for the region, a new hope not only for the government but also for the people, and create a model for the world that engaging together, sitting together, thinking outside the box, trying to work on things that bring us together, trying to invest on the common values and common interests that we share together, regardless of our differences. This is what the Abraham Accord did. And the good thing about the Abraham Accord, it isn't a political agreement between two governments, like what happened, the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt in the late 70s, or in the early 90s between Israel and Jordan. It's different. It's created a platform where a real engagement, not only between the government to government, but also business to business, people to people, and a real engagement of all sectors, all stakeholders on both sides engage in talking about what? In talking about things that will bring us together, in talking about peace, and thinking in a way outside the box, outside what we used to be thinking in the last 7-8 decades. So this is the Abraham Accord. It is the only hope that we see, bringing a change to the region, and a change that will benefit everyone, not only Emirati and Israeli, but all those who are part of our region. And this is where you will see the real impact that, Bahrain joined immediately, later on Morocco, Sudan also was on board, and then the Abraham Accord initiative started warming up the peace between Israel and Egypt, between Israel and Jordan, and also it started also building bridges between Israel and Turkey and other Arabs and Muslim countries. This is some of the outcome that we see of the Abraham Accord. And this is why it's very important not to look at it as a political agreement. No, it's a comprehensive engagement. It's a new platform that creates a vision for the future for everyone. And this is where, we saw the real impact and the added value on our side in the UAE. We had Expo, and during Expo we had about 300,000 Israeli visiting Expo. This is something, if you talk about it, before 3-4 years, everyone would say this, you can't imagine. It's impossible. No way that will happen. But because we start thinking outside the box, and we made a real engagement, and we kept the momentum, pushing the boundaries, trying to engage everyone, especially not only people to people, even the youth, from both sides. And this is where we see that, we regret that the Abraham Accord didn't happen for 10 or 20 or 30 years. I do understand that many outside the region, they don't understand yet the Abraham Accord. And they still think with the boundary that they use and the limitation and the stereotype that they had for many years that we had before the Abraham Accord. But, it's our region, and we are the one should take the lead. It's our responsibility, to make a decision related to our region, and we do expect from our friends, everywhere to support and to join in promoting this initiative regionally and globally. And this is where, I say this now, after the announcement of the Abraham Accord, I was approached by one European friend, and he said, Ali, after 2 weeks, actually, the Abraham Accord agreement was announced on August 13th, 2020. After 2 weeks, he called me and said, Ali, how come you didn't tell us about this initiative? I said, we didn't tell you because, frankly, we believe that you are part of the problem. You are not part of the solution. Because you still think in a stereotype that you've been approaching our region in the last, 40, 50 years. You didn't change, and you are not willing to listen to us. So this is why we didn't approach you. We started this initiative, and we move forward, and we hope that you will see the outcome of it and will join us. And this is where it's very important, for academicians to start thinking outside the box, outside what they used to do when they look at the issue and the crisis in the Middle East. We are not undermining the Palestinian cause, no. Actually, this is the only hope to create peace and to engage the Israeli and the Palestinians to come to the negotiating table and look into a real solution. Because this is where, where we see the real outcome of engaging together, of talking about peace. The Israeli and Palestinian, they have to live together. There is no way, and both sides, they have tried in many decades. Other option, it didn't work. The only option they have is to sit together and accept each other, look into their right, both sides, and start, engaging in creating a peace and a new hope for the their people with a better future. And once they do that, they will see not only the region, but the international community actually will engage and support that. And this is where I see that, academicians, they have to play a role in trying to bring Palestinian and Israeli academicians to sit together, to talk together, to try, to engage in creating a new narrative, a narrative that believes in coexistence, a narrative that believes in acceptance and respect, and trying to engage especially the youth to play a role in bridging the gap, bringing the two sides, to a solution that will benefit both sides and to create a better future for both sides. And this is what we need to be doing. And this is where, in the Abraham Accord, we started creating many initiatives that engage, friends from outside the region. We have groups in the British Parliament. We call them the Abraham Accord group. And we have another group in the Congress, in the American Congress. We are working for creating another group in the European Parliament and in other countries. We want, our friends outside the region to engage with us in promoting a narrative that will change the whole region. When we talk about peace, we want peace for all. We want a real engagement. We want to change, the narrative that, is common in the region. It's part of a culture in the region. And this is where we need support of everyone. And part of the impact that I saw of the Abraham Accord actually, for example, is talking about the Holocaust. This year, the International Holocaust Day, Remembrance Day, was celebrated in Egypt, in Jordan, in Bahrain, in UAE, in Morocco. This is, you never imagined that this will happen for 3-4 years. Now it's happening. And people starting to look into these issues with a different approach. This is where I believe, because of the way that people look at academicians, that we need people in academia to take a lead, to play a role in supporting the Abraham Accord and to engaging, especially from the Israeli and the Palestinian academicians, to engage actually in promoting the Abraham Accord regionally and globally. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your important words. Would it be okay if we ask you a couple of questions from our group?
Sure.
Thank
yes,
you.
Yes, sure.
So would anybody like to ask a question? Usher, I think you have to come here to ask the question. Are you able to see us?
Yes.
Okay,
I
good.
can see you, but I don't.
No.
Yes, no, I see you.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Asher. Thank you so much for speaking. I wanted to ask how soon the population will feel the benefits of the accord. Of course, there's unprecedented economic links now, and that's really, really great. Will there be trickle down economics where the people feel the benefits of the economy soon, or is that going to be 10 years, or is it felt instantaneously? I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, you see, this is where, I think from the first week, the people start feeling, the result of this agreement. I'm talking about the Emirati and the Israeli. And, if you follow the social media, you will see that there is a re-engagement between the Emirati youth and the Israeli on social media. Having their own dialogue, engaging initiatives together. And now you see we have students studying in Israel. We have also Israeli students coming to the UAE. This is the real engagement. You know, when you have exchange of students, exchange of faculty members, the engagement that we have also, it's very selective when it comes to the business sector, and also when in the cyber technology, the water, energy, in agriculture, and many in water. I mentioned water between the Israeli and the Emirati. There is so many initiatives and projects, not only from government to government, but also from private sector to private sector, that has huge impact on the general public of both countries. And this is where, you know, one of the things that was agreed upon before 6 months, that the UAE allocated about $100 million to support the Israeli startup. You know, this is a real impact when you engage with those, you know, who are innovative, who believe in themselves and believe that they can create something will benefit the world. Israeli new startup, and you bring the UAE money to engage with them, to support them and fund them. This is a real impact, you see. And when I mentioned that, you know, we have about 300,000 Israelis visiting Expo, this is a real impact. You can't imagine this number, 300,000 from Israel coming to the UAE. And you have to understand also that the Abraham Accord, it didn't also, you know, remove the boundary between the UAE and Israel. It did open a new venues for Jews all over the world. You know, before the announcement, we had a community of about 200 Jews in the UAE. Now we have thousands of them. And you see, and there is every day there is visitors from all over the world. Jews coming to the UAE to explore the country, to engage in business, to engage in a discussion, in a dialogue, you know, to find out what's the impact of the Abraham Accord on the, you know, in the UAE. And this is a real impact. So our focus is engaging people to people. And this is where I say, you know, it's very important to understand the Emirati-Israeli agreement, peace agreement. You can't compare it to the Israeli-Egyptian or the Israeli-Jordanian. No, it's a full engagement, you know, from both sides, and also it's taking the responsibility for the region. Now you see there is an initiative that between Israel, UAE, and Jordan to bring water to Jordanian from Israel and to bring power, electricity from Jordan to Israel. This is an initiative that, you know, it's one of the impact and the outcome of the Abraham Accord. You can say there's the other initiatives with Egypt, with Morocco, with Sudan, and with other African countries. I believe the Abraham Accord is an agent of change for the whole region, and it's a model for the world. Wherever there is conflict, there is always a way to find a solution. By sitting together, by engaging in a dialogue, by looking into the things that bring people together and moving forward.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Hello, Dr. Ali, nice to meet you. I'm Dr. Rabbi from Gordon College in Haifa, and your speech is very, very inspiring. I really think that you think, and I'm the head of the Holocaust Center in my university, so I want to invite you and me to active together with the students, young people. You told about young people. We have an amazing project about the Holocaust with German students and Jewish students, Israelis, and Arab and Druze students. So I think we can know each other with our roots, okay, your roots, Israeli roots, I think this is the way to make cooperation and good relationship to know each other. So this is my invitation, okay?
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me, and you can take my contacts from Charles, and let's stay in touch. But you mentioned the issue of root. I just want to say this. Charles did hear it from me before. In 2016, I was in New York attending a meeting related to those victims of the ISIS in northern Iraq. Most of them at that time were Christian. And the meeting was how to help them, support them. And I gave a speech. I said, look, you are committing a huge mistake by taking these Christians from northern Iraq to Europe, to North America, to Australia. If you take them from their villages that they have been living there for centuries, they will not return. If you want to help them by protecting them in their villages. And I said, look, Christian, Jews, their root is not in New York or in Washington or in London or in Paris. Their root is in our region. Jews and Christians are part of our history and they should be part of our future. And this is very important to understand it, and let those decision makers everywhere, understand, what kind of threat that we are facing and what kind of solution that we need. We need a solution that will preserve and protect people in the region, not to take them out of the region. So thank you very much, and let's stay in touch, and it's an honor for me to engage
Okay,
you.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elie. And also, as one of our colleagues invited you to Haifa, other colleagues want to invite you to their university. So I'll give you a list and you'll tell me who to, I'll connect you to who you like. But I think there's many people in the room that would like to do work with you. Okay, so thank you so much for being here. You're welcome to stay. Now I would like to invite Natan Sharansky to address the group.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll address this point that Dr. Elie said about that there was no hope and now there is a hope from a little bit different angle. I was against Oslo Agreement, and not 10 years after it, and not 1 year after that. My first article against, or that saying that Oslo Agreement is a big mistake, was like 2 weeks after it was signed, and there was a lot of enthusiasm and hope for New Middle East. And I said, that's not the way to bring peace, to impose on Palestinians dictator, and not to decide together with Palestinians, not to give them to decide above their heads. We want peace, we need strong dictator who will defeat Hamas. That's exactly the words, only that it is good that we are not speaking about some Democrat, because without free press, without the Supreme Court, without human rights organizations, he will defeat for us Hamas much quicker than we can do. And not only it was to impose on the people the dictator, it was also decided that in order it will be our dictator, we'll have to give him a lot of money, and $30 million every month, which belong to Palestinian people from Texas, were transferred to his private account in order to make sure that he will be working for us and not for somebody else. And as I wrote, like 10 days after Oslo Agreement, I said that the only way for the dictator to stay at power is to have external enemy. There will be no better external enemy than Israel. And really what we had then, that the new generation of Palestinians hates us even more than than before, and all the beginnings of the civil society of Palestinians, with their relatively independent press, with a lot of debates about how should be our political future with different parties, that was the end of it. Because now there had to be control of one person who wants to make peace, because he came as a part of the agreement between leaders of Israel and the leaders of the United States of America. So, and by the way, that when I wrote my article and spoke with some Israeli leaders, they said it's all good, but it's very naive. Starting developing civil society, it takes another 30 years. And we're going to have peace in 3 years. So 30 years pass, we are not closer to peace. And then comes the blessing of Abraham Accords. And some people can say, well, but Abraham Accords, it's not exactly with developed democracy. But that is people to people, it's not from imposing on anybody. And that's the big difference that Professor Elie is right. It's not like agreement with Jordan, not like agreement with Egypt, because though agreement which was signed by Sadat keeps it was still in action. But you understand that until this day, if some, let's say, singer will decide to come to Israel for a few concerts, all the public opinion will be against him, it will be the end of his career. That's kind of peace which is brought from the top and not accepted by the society. With Abraham Accord, the moment it was signed, there are, I did something, no? There are businessmen who are competing to joint ventures, there are art directors who want to make mutual films, hundreds of thousands of tourists in both directions. Unbelievable, something unheard of. Because people are thirsty for peace. And no doubt that as a result, civil institutions will be built. But you want to, in an actual world, when it goes from the grassroots, from the desire of the people, that helps to have a civil institution. And then, inevitably, it will influence on our relations with Palestinians. First, it will be Palestinian businessmen who will be involved in these joint ventures. Then social leaders, and then social institutions will emerge. So I'm very optimistic, I'm very excited, and I think that finally we are on the right way, not to impose anything, but really to start building the peace together. Thank you. Shiloh?
Dr. Satloff, so comments? And then we'll do Q&A after.
Oh my gosh. Just stand back. First, I just want to say, I don't know if he's on the line, but it's a pleasure to be on with Dr. Nuaimi, if he's still there. A great and good friend. Nice to see you, Abadie. So I want to say something about a topic we haven't discussed, and it's to inject a little dose of realism on an issue of enthusiasm that has captivated a lot of people, especially since Joe Biden went to Saudi Arabia and was able to negotiate overflight rights and future Hajj direct flights for Israeli Arabs going to Mecca. And that is whether the Saudis are about to be, sometime in the near future, the next and perhaps the biggest Arab state to normalize with Israel. There's an enormous amount of effort that's going into this, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of expectation, a lot of hope that yes, the Emiratis are terrific, yes, the Bahrainis are wonderful, but the big enchilada, as we say in America, are the Saudis. And when they finally come out of the proverbial closet and have an open, normalized relationship with Israel, then we can say that this Arab world, inter-Arab, Arab-Israel conflict has truly come to a close. Doesn't mean that there isn't a serious Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but the Arab state conflict with Israel will, for all intents and purposes, have reached its closing moment. I don't think it's going to happen anytime very soon, because I don't think we're asking the right question. And the right question is not are the Saudis about to normalize with Israel, or what it would take for the Saudis to normalize with Israel. I think the better question to ask is, where on the list of national priorities for Saudi Arabia does one find normalization of Israel? Because there's so much that's happening in Saudi Arabia today that the Emirates did already over the last 50 years. But there's so much happening in Saudi Arabia today that it's a mistake to look at it through a very narrow lens of just the question of whether they're going to normalize with Israel. Now, the Emirates have already been through equality for women, an enormously high percentage of female workforce participation in the UAE. The Emirates have already been through, for decades, the question of non-Muslim prayer. You find synagogues, churches, Buddhist temples, you name it, in the Emirates. The Emirates have already been through the question of alcohol consumption. Go to Dubai, it's like Vegas in some parts. It's very different than being in Saudi Arabia. They've figured out how to do many of the changes that the Saudis are only beginning to approach. Those other changes that I referred to, I think they're on the table for Saudi Arabia. Not because of religious imperatives, not even because of social imperatives, but because they all play into what is, if you're a Star Trek fan, would be called the Prime Directive, which in Saudi Arabia is, what do we need to do in our country to prepare for the day? The actual date doesn't matter, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, but to prepare for the day when having oil be our great national resource is not going to sustain us any longer as a country. Everything in Saudi Arabia these days is funneled, in my view, through that fundamental lens. And so I'll just take these two items that I just referred to. Alcohol and non-Muslim prayer. Alcohol and non-Muslim prayer? How does this connect to the future of Saudi economic energy independence? I'll just take a moment and explain. The Saudis, on the first, the Saudis are investing enormous sums of money, enormous, in tourism. Yes, believe it or not, the Saudis are convinced that Saudi Arabia is going to be one of the world's great next tourist destination. Why do you think they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on this golf campaign to take down the PGA with the Saudi-backed golf tour? The main reason is because Saudi Arabia knows that international golf tourists are among the tourists that spend the most money to go around the world playing at the world's great golf courses. And the Saudis have built 9 new Jack Nicklaus golf courses all over the kingdom. And they hope to attract these high-rolling golf tourists, among other resorts along the Red Sea coast. And indeed, why did they just do this deal for the islands with Egypt? So they can build a resort on one of these islands and build a bridge over the resort to mainland. But the Saudis know as well as you and I know that almost every golfer worth his salt does something after they finish 18 holes. They have a drink. And that there isn't going to be a successful golf tourism industry until they figure out how to accommodate this basic element of international tourism. Let's turn to the other one. The Saudis recently issued a regulation which said that if you are a major corporation and you want to do business with either the Saudi government or the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, you want to sign a contract with the Saudi government or the Sovereign Wealth Fund, you have to have the regional headquarters of your company in Saudi Arabia. Most Middle East regional headquarters are now in Dubai. A few are in Cairo. But most aren't in Saudi Arabia. But if you want to get this big pie, and the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund is huge, you have to relocate. Now, does anybody really think that the senior vice presidents and all those high-level executives of all those major corporations are going to move to Riyadh or Jeddah with their wives and kids and not be able to celebrate Christmas? Not be able to enjoy the regular family life that people can enjoy in Dubai and elsewhere? Highly unlikely. And so the day is coming, I think, at some point, that on both these fundamental issues, finding a way to accommodate foreigners who want to drink, finding a way to accommodate foreigners who want to pray the way they want to pray, we're going to see these other fundamental changes in Saudi Arabia that we've already seen in a place like the UAE. And it's within this spectrum that we have to look at Saudi relations with Israel, the public relations, because under the table there's quite an extensive set of economic, military relations between Saudis and Israelis. And so as we look out into the future and we see what the Emirates have built, we see what Bahrain has built, we should also recognize that the Emirates built other things into their societies over the last 50 years that helped create a more liberal environment in which later there was normalization with Israel. It's in that context that we should ask ourselves about how and when will the Saudis also normalize publicly with Israel, recognizing that all these other changes are likely to come even earlier. Thank you very much.
Rob, thank you very much for your unique and important perspective, bringing another dimension to the issues. Thank you. Rabbi Abadie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Charles, and Your Excellency, Dr. Elie. It's such a pleasure and honor to be sitting with you here at this panel, although we are thousands of kilometers away. It's a pleasure and honor, and of course, pleasure and honor to be with the Honorable Natan Sharansky, a legend in the Jewish, not just the Jewish, the whole world, and Dr. Satloff. Pleasure and honor. So I will speak about the Abraham Accords from my vantage point as a rabbi, as a spiritual leader, and to say that the Abraham Accords have infused a new life into the Jewish community of the Emirates and also of the entire Gulf. And I say new life because there was a small Jewish community, as Dr. Elie mentioned, before the Abraham Accord. There were probably less than 200 individuals, which I visited twice before the Abraham Accords. And now, as Dr. Elie mentioned, we probably have 1,000 and something, but we know of 600 that are active and members of the community. And so this new life has really given a pride and a resurgence of Jewish life in the entire region. To think that when I was there for the first time 3 years ago in 2019, in that small community of less than 200 people, there was one place of prayer, was the villa, and it was, of course, with the tacit approval of the government, but it was not known much about it around. And people used to go there in a very quiet way and everything. They celebrated the holidays and Shabbat and everything. But it was pretty quiet. Very, very few people knew about it. And now, and of course there was no kosher restaurants, there was no kosher hotels, there was no mikveh, there was no Jewish nursery. And now only 2 years later, even less than 2 years, when I already got there, the first kosher restaurant opened up. And that's 4 months after less than 4, I was there 2 months after the Abraham Accord. And so in 2 months, there was already kosher food. So now we have 6 kosher restaurants, several hotels that provide kosher food on a permanent basis, and there is a law that every single tourist who requires kosher food can demand from the hotel that he or she is staying 24 hours in advance, and that hotel is obligated to provide that kosher meal. Nowhere in the world, not even Israel, have such rule for the tourism. And so you could be anywhere in the Emirates. If you are a Jewish tourist who would like to eat kosher, you don't have to be Jewish. If you want to eat kosher, you have to ask the hotel 24 hours in advance, and you're going to get that kosher food. Yeah, with a slightly premium cost, but you're going to get it. When you have a country who, before the incoming of the Israeli and Jewish tourists, required of every single hospitality worker, that means hotel workers, from the concierge to the receptionist to the bedroom maid to fix, to clean, to the cleaners, every single waiter and waitress in restaurants, they were required to take a course of 2 weeks how to welcome Jewish tourists. I saw the syllabus. I was asked to advise on that course, and they were required that any employee in the tourist industry who does not take that course was relieved of his or her position. They have to have a certificate to be able to continue in their job. Which country, again, in such a small period of time, in which now not only there's one villa where there are prayers, there is 5 or 6 places that there are regular prayers, hotels, villas, and more hotels. And with a lot of people attending, there's no secrecy, everybody is known, they're publicized, social media is all over. There was already a minyan at the top of the Burj Khalifa, and that was around Hanukkah of 2020. Of course, it's not something that I condoned to have a public minyan at the top of Burj Khalifa, but to tell you how Jews feel free to exercise their faith with pride and with dedication, without any questions. What else I can tell you about the infusion of life in that? So it's not only in the UAE, it's also in the Bahrain. Bahrain is an ancient community, not so ancient, 140 years, we're not talking about centuries and millennia, but it's a community that in 1935 to 37 built their synagogue, was used for 11 to 12 years until 1948, and then they did not use it anymore because there were some riots against the Jews there. And then the Jews went into, not real hiding, but into very understated presence. They never attended the synagogue. The synagogue remained closed and locked until last year, after the Abraham Accord, in which the government of Bahrain and His Majesty the King was asking the Jewish community, why don't you use the synagogue that you have? Please use it. It's there to be used. Of course, it needed renovation. It was renovated, it was inaugurated, and now it's unused. So the community of Bahrain, who was kind of dormant for 70 years, now is alive and well. And of course, there is a hotel with full kosher food all the time in Bahrain. And so life for a Jew in the Gulf, not just in the UAE and Bahrain, but we have individual Jews in Saudi Arabia, we have individual Jews in Oman, and even in Kuwait and in Qatar. Kuwait and Qatar are much more, again, on the quiet side. Oman, there's 15 to 20 Jews. Some of them are professors, some of them are part of the diplomatic corps, in which they now want to exercise their faith, and they do it with pride. And so we founded the Association of Gulf Jewish Communities, which is an association of the Jewish communities and Jewish individuals in the 4 GCC countries, where we provide them with spiritual nourishment, with religious teaching, with holiday celebrations, matzah for Pesach and Haroset, shofar for Rosh Hashanah, lulav and etrog for Sukkot, Megillah reading for Purim, and it's in less than 2 years, you have a region that is so welcoming, where Jewish life is growing, as Dr. Satloff mentioned this morning. Where is the location and the place and the region where Jewish life has increased significantly more than anywhere in the world? It is that area, because of the welcoming, of the embrace that we are being given by the UAE primarily, and by the rest countries of the region. And I do believe soon things will open up, as Dr. Satloff mentioned, at least for the observance of different faiths. And so the Abraham Accords really brought not just a new life, but a completely new reality to the region, where not just Jewish faith, but specifically Jewish faith is growing, is developing, is thriving, and will continue to do so. Now, the people that came to the Emirates to live prior to the Abraham Accords were mostly Jews that was not that important for them a Jewish life. They came there because their company must have asked them if they would want to relocate to Dubai, and Dubai is an exciting place, a beautiful place. They were Jewish because they were born Jewish or married to Jew, and they say yes. So kosher food, religious observance was not important. And yet, once the Abraham Accords were signed, even those same people felt such a sense of freedom, such a new life infused in them as Jews, even though they were not observant, they were not really practicing Jews. And so now we have Jews that are moving from France, from England, from the United Kingdom, from Geneva, from Belgium, of course from Israel, from the United States and Canada. And now they're moving because now they say not only we can move and work there, but we could live as Jews, as practicing, observant Jews. We have kosher food, we have mikveh, we have education, we have, of course, places of prayer. So it has changed the region completely. And I do believe, and I am very optimistic, that the entire region will eventually open up, change. And I think that will be, I'm not a prophet, and I'm not a future, teller, a foreteller. But I'm going to bet that the region will become the next great diaspora of Jews, if you will. But it will be the closest one to Israel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, if you gentlemen would like to sit at the table, we'll take a few questions from the audience. And can we put on show the participants? Okay, so who has a question? Ben.
It is gratifying to see the potential international ramifications of this deal and the movement away from immediate existential threats from other states for Israel. But the way that I understand it, it is largely predicated on the power of Israel's economy, which is itself based in the modern day a lot on the investment and presence of Western-based transnational corporations who could, at the behest of their governments, leave at any moment, basically, because of the deals that they've established with the Israeli government, which may happen depending on the foreign government's opinions of Israel, which are often influenced by the Israeli-Palestine conflict. So my question is, could this lead to a more stable situation for itself, basically, by creating a better situation for Israel-Palestine? Or is it essentially hanging in the balance of our situation at home? Basically what I'm asking is this going to have ramifications for Israel-Palestine, or is it just international?
Well,
That's ultimately not me.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
definitely. But it's not contingent on it. So, I'm sorry, you want me to use this thing?
Yeah.
Sure. There is definitely an impact it goes both ways. There's definitely an impact of the Gulf-Israel relationship on the Israeli-Palestinian relationship. We saw this from day one. I mean, what were the Emiratis' condition to do normalization? It was that the Israelis suspend efforts to annex territory in the West Bank for a minimum of 4 years. We will begin to see how the Israelis define their own priorities in 2 years when those 4-year period comes to an end, and depending on what the government is in Israel, we'll see whether or not they choose to, go in the route of annexation, which I think is highly unlikely, or they want to build on the relationships that they've built within the Gulf. So that's one area in which there's the connection. The other area is the one where, at the other end of the spectrum, what you're suggesting, which is to what extent will progress between Israelis and Palestinians provide a firmer anchor for what Israel is doing with Arab states more broadly around the region. One hopes that that's the case, and you're seeing incremental movement in that direction. Palestinians are becoming a little bit more interested, for example, in what happened at the Negev summit and the creation of 6 different working groups of Israel and its peacemaking Arab states on all sorts of practical issues: food security, energy security, you name it. Now, they don't want to go all the way to join that because there's still this psychological barrier that it means giving up something. I think it's a big mistake analytically, but it's not my role to tell them they're right or wrong. But they want to get more involved in that, which is good. And the more involved that they do get, the better off everybody is, because as you say, it provides a firmer anchor for the regional stuff. But if you're asking me, does there have to be a final Israeli-Palestinian peace for this to survive? No. What there can't be is the opposite. There can't be the final end of any hope for Israeli-Palestinian peace. At that point, this is in trouble.
Yeah, well, I want to add a couple of things. First of all, I think it's wrong to believe that these agreements are mainly based on the power of big corporations and the interest of their involvement. Let's not be idealists. It started from the feeling of Iranian threat, and I can tell you that that's what I know from Israeli diplomats and from our ambassador in Washington then, that the first telephones from Bahrainian and some other partners came, it's a very essential thing, but came after the speech of Prime Minister Netanyahu in the American Congress, the step which was highly criticized by many, but that's when some potential Arab partners understood that if there is some firm force against Iran, which will be not compromising even with the American position, it's Israel. So with all our idealism, the first was a very simple consideration, by the way, including Saudi Arabia, that we need urgently forces which will stand with us, or instead of us, or with us, against Iranian threat. Then, I think important thing is, Israel is by itself, in many ways, real superpower of high-tech and some other things in the Middle East. And Shimon Peres was dreaming, immediately with Oslo, he published a book about the new Middle East. He was dreaming that simply because Israel has a lot to propose to Arab nations, then because of their practical need to share economic success with Israel, they'll be interested. Of course, it was naive that, in fact, the relations with Arab countries became the prisoner of Israeli-Palestinian relations. It was clear that if there is no improvement in Israeli-Palestinian relations, there will be no improvement with Arab world. And here, I believe the most important factor is that that's as I said, the accord which came from the bottom up. So it's desire of the people. It's not desire of some leader who came today and maybe will be overthrown tomorrow. And that is why it is much more stable than the other agreements. And that's why I believe it gives real hope, because I think what happened, at least in 30 years at the time in Israel, I came straight from Soviet prison to Israel, in these 30-something years, the major changes that I think overwhelming number of Israelis is not on the far left and not on the far right. Overwhelming majority, the question of peace with Palestinians is the question of security only. And being alone in the Middle East, like standing against everybody, that like this leadership, Palestinian leadership, which we impose on them, is saying to us, you want to have better relations, you'll have to give up on territories, and we know what's happening with this territory. They're turning into the launching pads for the terrorist attacks. It was impossible. But the more secure Israelis felt, and no doubt that Abraham Accord suddenly gives a lot of feeling of security to Israelis, the more open they are to very serious, far-going deals with Palestinians. And on the other hand, I think the more and more Palestinians, first of all, it is businessmen who already were immediately interested. In fact, Abu Mazen tried to stop them, then the Americans said you cannot stop them, and they already start being part of the many joint ventures which are happening. But then the other parts of society will follow. So yeah, I believe this Abraham Accords is a good push for both societies towards building peace. I think it will take time, but definitely in the right direction.
So I have a question more about the geopolitical question about the part that the United States has been playing in the Middle East. I feel like it's a bit erratic at some times. So in one hand, and this is how I perceive it, they're trying to build a deal with Iran. And the other hand, they're trying to build this block of security for all these other countries, or they're supporting it. So I would like to understand more if, where are they, you know, with this whole situation? I know there's two different governments, and that's part of it, but as an international analyst, it's kind of weird that they're doing both at the same time.
Good question. Well, look, we are now in the third administration in a row, Obama, Trump, Biden, whose basic premise is to lower Americans' profile in the Middle East and to diminish our vulnerability, our exposure to Middle East shocks and crises. This is the Trump and the Democrats agree on very little, but one of the things they did agree on, one of the things that Obama and Trump and Biden agree on is they wanted to shrink America's exposure in the Middle East. And so the question was how to do it. So Obama, his basic approach was to try to reach an accommodation with Iran that would limit the possibility, in his view, of a conflict with Iran and to compel our allies, our Arab allies, to themselves reach an accommodation with Iran. They didn't like this. They thought it was a cockamamie approach. And he is best known in the Middle East for an interview in which he gave in the Atlantic suggesting that Saudi Arabia and Iran, that Saudi Arabia should share the Persian Gulf with Iran, which the Saudis obviously didn't like. But the Iran nuclear deal, again, we can agree, we can disagree on it, I wasn't a fan, but the basic idea is to cap a terrible problem for any American administration and to kick it down the road a long way, or at least what seemed to be a long way in 2015. Donald Trump came in, had the same strategic objective. He wanted to get America out of everything, right? He wanted to get us out of NATO, wanted to get us out of Asia, wanted to get us out of the Middle East. He couldn't quite get us out, but he didn't want to keep us engaged. And so he ripped up the Iran nuclear deal, but he didn't put anything else in its place. He didn't offer a different alignment with our allies, really, to shore up our allies when the Iranians attacked Saudi Arabia, as they did against the Aramco facilities. We did nothing. And so he was also known, other than his one bumping off an Iranian military leader, he was also known in the Middle East for actually not reacting to Iranian provocations. And then, Joe Biden, his first major step was to withdraw from Afghanistan, which went over like a lead balloon in the Middle East. Oh my God, it's a clear, visible sign of American retreat. Now, when he went to Riyadh and Jeddah a couple of weeks ago, I think the most interesting statement that he made, and it makes a lot more sense if you put together the timeline of the Zawahiri, the preparation for the killing of Zawahiri, which was occurring at the exact same time, was when he said in Jeddah, I've only come to realize how important it is to stay in this part of the world. Which doesn't mean that we're going to take on our enemies with new vigor, but it does mean that we're going to halt a further decline, a further departure. But the bottom line is that they all tend to agree. They just disagree on their tactics. But there's a if you just want to, think about it one way. It's 32 years ago last week, that the United States made a commitment to repel Saddam's invasion of Kuwait. Mm-hmm. And we sent 500,000, 500,000 soldiers, sailors, and airmen to the Middle East to do it. Numbers that are so beyond anything that any American could contemplate today. Today we're having a fight over whether we should have 500 guys in eastern Syria. We had 500,000 people in that conflict. And that just gives you a sense of how far the center of gravity of American strategy has moved over the last 30 years.
Just to carry on this point for Rob, some will say a diminishing role of the United States in the region. Others look at the United States as a weakening power, a power that can no longer be relied upon. The fact that people in the Middle East, or parties in the Middle East, perceive the United States as weakening and something that can't be counted on as it was in the past, is this driving the coming together of different interested countries in the region? Is it a withdrawal of the United States promoting peace in the region?
So there are some who say that the reason why the Emirates and the Israelis have found each other is because the departure of America from the region is leaving these small but powerful states on their own. Actually, I think that neither the Emirates nor the Israelis think that they're alone, and they still rely very much on the American role in the region. But that role has evolved. There's no doubt about it. I mean, one variation of that Saddam Kuwait lesson that I mentioned a moment ago is something that I've heard a lot around the Middle East the last 6 months, which goes like this. It almost sounds like a Talmudic, you gotta imagine the intonation. If 30 years ago, America went all the way to the Middle East when a big country tried to swallow a small country and used its own forces to expel in a fairly insignificant place. And then 32 years later, America refuses to send one of its own forces to the heart of Europe when a big country tries to swallow a small country. And in effect, our policy in Ukraine is to fight to the last Ukrainian, right? We don't call it that, but that's really what our policy is. Then, if we live in the Middle East, what are the chances that America is ever going to come back here again to help defend a small country that gets eaten by a big country? Very, 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 very slim. What's the other lesson that many Middle Eastern governments take away from this? Why did America go into Kuwait but not into Ukraine? Why did we go and get rid of Saddam but not the North Koreans? Why did we get rid of Gaddafi? Some countries have nukes and other countries don't. And one of the sort of meta lessons that Middle Eastern leaders are taking from the current situation is, if you have a nuclear capability, chances are far less likely that some big bad bully is going to come and try to swallow you up. And we have to worry about that over the next decade and more, that more and more Middle Eastern countries are going to think that getting nukes is in their interest.
But with this Talmudic wisdom, you can say that it is because of the diminishing role of America. Putin went to Syria and Putin went to Ukraine. There is no doubt, that I know directly from people in Moscow, that this was the major factor for Putin to decide both things almost simultaneously, almost with few weeks. So America didn't respond then, but now when, because Russia went to Ukraine in such a frightening way for the free world, they are involved. They are not sending their soldiers, but they are unprecedentedly involved with others. So it gives the hope that then they will be more involved also in the Middle East.
I would say yes to this, if that were the original American approach.
No,
what was American policy when the Russians invaded Ukraine?
Yeah.
It was to offer Zelensky how to
to
escape, a ticket out.
And modern things. Biden said, if it will be small aggression, we will not interfere.
And only when the Ukrainians showed remarkable resilience did they compel a change in our policy. The change in policy did not come from inside us. It came really from the Ukrainians. And yes, we reacted appropriately. But let's remember what our original intention was, which was, the Russians are going to overrun this country, and that'll be it.
But look, it didn't happen in Iran in 2009. Americans didn't respond to the readiness of Iranians to fight. So theoretically, it could not happen also.
Correct.
In Russia. But thanks God, the West was frightened enough by Putin, so they had to interfere.
Okay.
If I want to just add, I'm not a politician, but from observation, it seems to be that that's the modus operandi of the United States. Whenever they see that a country that has been supported by the U.S. is being overrun, the first thing they do is to offer safe haven to the leader. We saw it in Iran in 1979. We saw it in Egypt with Mubarak, and we saw it plenty with other places. So it seems exactly in Tunisia also the same thing. So it seems that that's the modus operandi of the United States. They immediately backtrack or back off and allow, because they hope that the new regime will be on their side. And in many times they have been completely wrong about that. The same thing, they demanded the elections in Gaza, right? Democratic elections in Gaza, because they had hoped that if they show their goodness to the Hamas, to the leaders over there, they're going to be on their side. So they were wrong in Iran, they were wrong in Egypt, they were wrong in Tunisia, and they were wrong in Gaza.
So I don't dispute many of the specifics, but actually I think we often get the big things surprisingly right. as Churchill would have said,
Yes.
you know, after exhausting all the other alternatives.
Yeah.
So whether it's, you know, supporting Israel, supporting this peace, supporting, you know, there's all sorts of things we do get right. But I think the questioner, I think you quite accurately pointed out that we do have an erratic, what many Middle Easterners view as an erratic approach. In fact, in terms of numbers, the actual numbers of American soldiers, sailors, and airmen in the Middle East has been remarkably constant for the last 20 years.
Really?
It's been about 30,000. It just seems that we don't use them to respond when the circumstances you would think that we would respond, whether it's in Syria or when they hit Aramco or when they hit the Emirates. You would think that we would use our forces to do things. The forces are there. It's the political decision whether or not to use them.
If I may add that, and with that just briefly, from what I heard from some in the leadership of the UAE regarding if they feel that the United States has abandoned them, they didn't feel that the United States have abandoned them, but they do feel, or at least when I was told last year, they did feel that they cannot rely much on the United States. And the words that were used when they explained that to me was, we can no longer rely totally on the United States because we know what could happen. And if we have a country, a regional country that is powerful and it's on our side, then we would be foolish not to basically get together and have alliance with that.
And I won't get into it, but there's also the withdrawal and the type of withdrawal from Afghanistan that sends shockwaves around the world. So final question, we're supposed to leave the room in 4 minutes. So go ahead and mute.
I have a short question, and I would like all of you to reply for such question. Today there are so many ideas that peace should come from. I mean, it can be agriculture, sustainability, medical projects, and so on. So I would like to hear, if you would determine 3 main directions that peace should come from, what it would be. Thank you.
Well, I'll dare to say that, as I thought all these years, peace will come from developing civil society. And it seems like crazy idea that developing civil societies in Arab countries. I was saying 20 years ago and say today that Arab society has the same right on the living in freedom as any other society. And the fact that we are ignoring this fact, trying to build peace, circumventing it, I think is a big mistake. The fact that today it's coming back, that's what gives me the big hope. Well, so freedom, then joining the modern high-tech world, the ideas, and that's definitely happening. Well, that's the thing that I see. There are definitely many answers.
So it's with a bit of trepidation, but actually I take the opposite view. Which
it will come from dictators.
It'll come from, well, I prefer to say it'll come from leadership.
Well,
That leaders help to set the agenda for their nations. That I mean, some of this depends on what you define as peace. I mean, if we waited for what Natan, quite legitimately calls for, we wouldn't have peace with Egypt, and we wouldn't have peace between Israel and Jordan. But we do, because they had visionary leaders who could force things upon their people. Now it's not full, it's not complete, but it's a hell of a lot better than the alternative. And so I think that for me the main missing ingredient, one that we saw with MBZ, for example, who was the variable in the Abraham Accords, but we haven't seen in some other circumstances, is leadership.
So I'm seated in the middle, and I'm going to take the middle of the road explanation. You definitely need leaders, and you definitely need grassroots. And I have seen it living in the region, the amazing change in the youth in the Emirates, the youth in Saudi Arabia, the youth even in Kuwait and in many other countries of the region. They have come, especially because of the internet and because of the social media. If you really analyze the social media coming from that region, you're going to see a tremendous change of heart. Youth that wants modernity, youth that wants relations with Israel, youth that wants technology. And so I think the approach is going to be coming from top to bottom and bottom to top. And that is what's going to make the peace in the future. If I may say, the difference between Egypt, Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and Egypt, the Abraham Accord, is that the leaders of Egypt and Jordan interest in the peace with Israel was most likely and most importantly security, stability of the regime, and money, right? And benefits from the United States. Now, the irony is that they use that to make peace with Israel, and then they use Israel as an external enemy to maintain the stability of their regime. Hosni Mubarak is the prototype of that example. He had 30 years to educate his population, if not to love the Jews and Israel, but to live at peace with Israel. And yet he did not. He allowed anti-Semitic propaganda, Israel propaganda, a series on television were against Israel, against the Jews. Only why? Because he needed to maintain his seat. And then when it was convenient for him, he ran for Israel for security, to the same thing with King Abdullah of Jordan. I mean, without Israel and the United States, Abdullah would have been gone long ago. It is the security that Israel provides to him, the intelligence that they provide to him. So he uses the peace to shore his, and yet at the same time, he uses anti-Israel rhetoric to shore up his position. That's very unfortunate, where he's much more different than the Abraham Accord.
Thank you. So, on behalf of everybody here, I'd like to thank the panel very much for a very special evening. I want to say something that's also very important, and we're discussing positive things, which is wonderful. On a summer institute dealing with hatred, we're talking about some positive developments, which is wonderful. And I know this is the William Prusoff Memorial Lecture. And I see Laura Prusoff's online and Professor Shinazi's online, who worked with Professor William Prusoff. So Bill Prusoff was a very optimistic, amazing man. He was a pharmacologist at Yale University who helped to create some of the first antiviral medication that was used to fight HIV. Him and his colleagues actually saved literally millions of people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Professor William Prusoff helped to start ISGAP. He was the first funder of ISGAP and was an amazing philanthropist and an extraordinarily humble guy. Despite making a fortune with the medications that he created, he would still go to Yale with a brown paper bag. He would make his own lunch and sit in his office. He would sit and eat with the janitors or the president of the university, always laughing. He was just an amazing man. And he helped to start ISGAP, and he passed a few years ago. He lived an amazing life, and it's really an honor that we're able to have a small memorial to remember his contribution, not just to ISGAP and the fight against anti-Semitism, but truly to humanity. And his daughter is online, and one of his colleagues that worked with him and was mentored by him. So it's special for those of us at ISGAP that we have this William Prusoff Memorial event every year. So, thank you. So now we go to the pub. And
I just want to say goodbye. I won't be here tomorrow. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. It was a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you, Dr. Charles. It was a pleasure and honor to be here with you these 4 or 5 days.
I forgot that you were going. It was an honor to be with you, and thank you for taking the time.